Hello, History 363. So today we're going to talk about the first Roman civil war fought between the followers of Gaius Marius and Lucius Cornelius Sulla. Now remember, Gaius Marius and Sulla have a history. Sulla was Marius's quaestor in Numidia and had played a key role in the sort of special operation that had captured Jugurtha. And this seems to be a basis of significant tension between them, because Sulla basically says, well, it was me who ended the war. I captured Jugurtha. Whereas Marius feels like, well, no, I ended the war. I was the commander. You just did that one little thing well. And this tension has carried out in their subsequent political career. Now, both Marius and Sulla serve as commanders during the social war, and indeed Marius kind of reinvents himself. He comes out of his retirement after the whole shameful incident with Appius Saturninus, and he's able to sort of find his element, which is as a military commander fighting the rebels. Sulla also does quite well, and indeed wins a special award that the Roman army has called the Grass Crown. In which if a commander is felt to have essentially saved a legion of citizens, the army spontaneously plucks grass from the battlefield, weaves it in a crown, and presents it to him. It's only rarely rewarded in Roman history. So both Marius and Sulla distinguish themselves during the social war. Now, for Sulla, he plans to use his service in the social war to run for consul. Therefore, he runs for consul and wins in 88. And he is given a command in a war that has broken out in the meantime in the east. And that is the war against Mithridates VI. Mithridates VI is someone who's been on Marius's radar actually for a while. Marius does a kind of private diplomatic trip into the East in the 90s to look at King Mithridates, who has come to power in Pontus, traditionally a relatively small backwater kingdom on the southern shore of the Black Sea. And Mithridates, however, has turned Pontus into a military powerhouse, expanding it by conquering mainly parts of the northern Black Sea, including the Crimea, which gives him access to both the really rich grain that's grown up there and also additional military manpower. And he's now using it to throw his weight around Asia Minor, again threatening in particular Bithynia and Cappadocia. Now, Mithridates is famous for a little morning routine that he has, in that he's terrified of being poisoned. And so every morning he drinks a kind of special breakfast smoothie, which he takes little tiny microdoses of all the poisons he can think of, mixes them together, and then drinks it, hoping that ingesting just a tiny amount of every poison will give him overall immunity to poisoning. And so for this reason, he is oftentimes known as the Poison King. Now, Mithridates clearly is taking advantage of the fact that the Romans are distracted with the social war. Although here it also seems that the kind of Roman ambassador in charge of the region, Manius Aquillius, badly botches the situation. Namely, Mithridates has been threatening Bithynia, a Roman ally. Aquillius manages to diplomatically force Mithridates to withdraw from Bithynia. But then he encourages the king of Bithynia to raid into Pontus to take loot and slaves, probably to pay off a bribe to himself. So this prompts a renewed response by Mithridates, who again is now probably sensing that the Romans are weak and distracted due to the outbreak of the social war. Aquillius raises a very small force, mostly of local troops, tries to confront Mithridates, is overwhelmed and captured, and may be executed by having molten gold poured down his throat. And Mithridates, meanwhile, has plans to expand. In 88, he gives orders to all of the Greek communities in Asia Minor, telling them that on a single day they should murder all of the Romans who are living in their midst. Remember, there's this big Roman diaspora of traders and businessmen. They're actually starting to acquire land. And they're living in a lot of communities across the Mediterranean, but including in the east. And it's clear that there's tension, since they oftentimes live in their own kind of special enclave, a coventus, and take advantage of their special status to get favorable treatment from the authorities. And so on a single day, the various Greek cities of Asia Minor rise up and murder all of these Roman civilians that are living amongst them, supposedly even dragging people, clinging from the altars. And our sources, this may not be accurate, suggest that as many as 80,000 Romans are killed in a single day. Certainly, probably several tens of thousands, men, women, children, a horrible massacre. And this is to prepare the way for Mithridates to sweep into Asia Minor with his armies. And in some ways, this is a way of forcing the communities to pick sides, right? Because once your community has massacred a bunch of Roman civilians, you're basically saying, yeah, we've thrown our lot in with Mithridates, and now we can't go back to Rome. Mithridates also is interested in achieving hegemony over Greece. Amongst other places, Athens throws its lot in with Mithridates, and Pontic forces move into Greece. So it's clear that now we need a commander to deal with this, in some ways, collapse of Roman hegemony in the East. And once the Civil War is wrapped up, once the Social War is wrapped up, and again, the Social War is this key distraction that really allows Mithridates to engage in military maneuvers that otherwise would be inconceivable. But when half of the Roman army is fighting previously what had been the other half of the Roman army, all of a sudden a lot more becomes possible. So an army is now going to be sent to fight Mithridates. It's going to be, the assignment is given to one of the two consuls, Sulla. And here Marius all of a sudden intervenes. After Sulla and his army has left to march down to Brundisium, to disembark, to go fight in the east, Marius manages to have a friendly tribune pass a law that revokes the command from Sulla and assigns it to Marius. And this is basically unprecedented. Now remember, Marius, when he had been elected consul, had a tribune pass a law that revoked the command from the proconsul, Aquillius Metellus, and had given it to Marius. But had given it to Marius when Marius was himself the sitting consul. Marius is now just a private citizen, and he has an ally pass a law that takes the command away from the sitting consul to give it to Marius, the private citizen. That's really just unprecedented. Is it constitutional? Well, technically, yes, because it's a law passed by the sovereign Roman people, but really that does kind of go against the way everything has worked up until now. Now, Sulla's response is equally shocking because rather than trying to litigate the issue, he turns around with his army and marches on Rome. And he marches on Rome with the intent of liquidating his political enemies, reasserting his command, and then going off to fight Mithridates. Now, Marius manages to flee, although Sulla does, when his army takes Rome, kill several of Marius's close allies who stay behind. Marius flees down all the way into Africa, where he basically takes advantage of his contacts and also recruits some of his veterans who have settled there into kind of an ad hoc force. But that being said, Sulla wants to go and fight Mithridates, so he subsequently goes off with his army. Two new consuls are elected for 87. One, Octavius, is an ally of Sulla. One, Cinna, is seen as at least attached to Marius. And Sulla takes his army and goes to fight Mithridates. He's off in the east, where he has some successes. He fights brutal sieges in Greece, including a siege in Athens, where he ultimately captures and sacks the city with substantial destruction. And then he crosses over into Asia Minor, defeats Mithridates, but doesn't defeat him totally. He basically says a pact is reached that allows Mithridates to return to his kingdom and establishes the kind of status quo antebellum. And of course, one reason that Sulla, this of course takes Sulla until 83 BC. The war still takes a lot of time. But one reason why Sulla doesn't pursue pursue Mithridates to the bitter end is he ultimately wants to end the war, and then he knows that he's going to have to go back home to settle affairs. Because in Sulla's absence, the Marians have asserted themselves. Marius has returned from Africa with a small force of veterans and freed slaves and slaves. And importantly, he is supported by Cinna, the consul for 87, who actually is able to mobilize Roman legions, including a number from Samnium. This is actually a case where we see Italian units all of a sudden, who until recently were Italian allies and until recently may have even been fighting the Romans, are now more than happy to pick sides in this Roman civil war. Cinna and Marius themselves recapture Rome and inflict a slaughter upon their political opponents. Marius is elected to his 7th consulship for 86 BC, of which he serves about a week or so before he finally dies. And that really leaves Cinna behind. And Cinna essentially, for the next 4+ years, will basically run Rome in an autocratic fashion or authoritarian fashion. He will hold multiple consulships. So he's consul every year, 87, 86, 85, 84, down to 83. He has his allies are his colleagues, including an important ally named Carbo. And we don't know a lot about this period, which is sometimes referred to as the dominatio Cinnae, the domination of Cinna. But it does seem that basically during this period in Rome, that the basic sort of structures of the Republic kind of shut down, in particular the courts, where aristocratic politicians are routinely suing and counter-suing and prosecuting and counter-prosecuting each other. It's kind of the background din of Roman political activity, or is court activity. These seem to grind completely to a halt during this period. As, again, one man holding iterative consulships sort of dominates the city. Now, Cinna and his allies, of course, know that Sulla's coming back. And what they really aren't prepared for is the fury with which Sulla returns, and also simply the high quality of Sulla's army. Now, Sulla comes back from Italy in 83. He is joined by a young aristocrat from a consular family, Gnaeus Pompeius Strabo, young Pompey, who will eventually be known as Pompey the Great. He's only about 19. He's probably actually the age that many of you are. But his family has huge estates in Picenum, and he recruits 3 legions, basically from his clients, so from people who his tenants, people who work on his estates, people who he hires to do seasonal labor. Those are the people that he basically creates like a private army. He personally appoints every military tribune and every centurion, and then he brings this force to Sulla and says, "I'd like to join you." And so Pompey is going to be one of Sulla's most brutal lieutenants. Sulla himself calls him the carnifex iuvenilis, the kid butcher. But suffice it to say, Sulla and Pompey pretty quickly mop up the Marians. Cinna is killed by his own troops. Gaius Marius himself has been dead, but his son is surrounded and defeated and killed in a siege at Praenestae, and therefore Sulla pretty handily is in control of Rome by 81 BC. And indeed then pursues the fleeing Marians down into Sicily and Africa, where most of them are killed. There's really only one Marian that survives, and this is a guy named Sertorius, who is a Marian commander. He is in Spain. He goes to Spain, and he essentially sets up a kind of counter state, an alternative state in Spain that we'll revisit, but he's really the only Marian that manages to hold on from the onslaught of Sulla. So now Sulla is in possession of Rome after this brief but brutal civil war, and there's some question, okay, well, what is he going to do? Sulla decides that he needs some kind of constitutional cover for what is essentially a military autocracy. And therefore he adopts the title of dictator, except this is a special type of dictator. It's not a dictator in remember the traditional dictator he has 6 months in office, He's usually called up or nominated to deal with a very specific either military emergency or to deal with a short-term task like holding an election when both of the consuls are away. But the goal is the dictator, while he technically has a lot of power, his tenure in office is so brief that he really, he really just has time to do that one thing he's supposed to do. Sulla is going to be a dictator for the restitution of the Roman state, and this allows, and the dictatorship that is created, of course, in a law that's basically passed by the people who are, surrounded by Sulla's soldiers, is going to give him much more time in office. Although Sulla is, Sulla has some odd scruples, he will ultimately give up his dictatorship and retire as a private citizen, but after much more than 6 months. Now, as dictator, Sulla therefore passes a series of laws which are designed to designed to basically reform the Roman Republic, but reform it in a rather a conservative or reactionary way. And so among his laws are a reform of the cursus honorum, which regularizes the cursus honorum, prescribes very specific ages for when each office can be held, and also plays with the number of offices. So after Sulla, there will now be 20 quaestors, 8 praetors, and of course still 2 consuls. And the reason for increasing the number of quaestors is actually important. Remember there's this old problem of who should run the courts. Sulla, being a patrician aristocrat and extremely conservative, decides that the courts are going to be staffed by senatorial jurors. And in some ways, he falls back on the proposal of Livius Drusus that had been abrogated upon Drusus's death, which is to expand the Senate by rolling in a number of equestrians into the Senate. Sulla basically does this. He says every year, instead of electing probably 10 quaestors, we're going to elect 20, and this is going to produce a Senate that ultimately will have about 600 people. This will give an opportunity for more equestrians who want to run and achieve office in Rome. And then this enlarged Senate will be sufficient to provide the jurors for the courts. And Sulla actually, in his legislation, also expands the standing courts, including creating a new court for murder. The Cornelian, there's a series of Cornelian laws. Now there's a Cornelian murder court. Sulla also decides that he's going to severely constrain the powers of the tribunes of the plebs. Remember, it had been a tribunician law that had tried to take Sulla's command away from him in the first place. And so, therefore, Sulla decides to ban, effectively, tribunician legislation. So tribunes are not going to be allowed to call legislative assemblies. Basically, the tribunes are still there, but they're basically reduced to their very almost kind of primitive functions of intercessio to protect individual Roman citizens. But now they can't call and pass laws. This really hobbles the office. It also he puts a constraint on the office, saying if you want to run for tribune of the plebs, you can't subsequently hold higher office. This seems to designed to discourage people from actually, who are very ambitious, from trying to be tribune and then do a lot of radical things to hop up to the next office. So this hobbling of the tribune of the plebs is actually a real reactionary reform. Sulla also ends the subsidized grain dole, which again had been seen as this kind of popular benefit to the Roman citizens, and of course is the product of had been started by none other than Gaius Gracchus. So Sulla therefore institutes again this series of really mostly reactionary reforms, and then having done so, decides that he is going to step down. He seems to feel confident enough that his reforms will hold. And therefore he retires probably in late 79. Sets down his dictatorship, goes off to the Bay of Baha'i in Campania, and lives with his boyfriend until he dies. Dies shortly thereafter. This sort of brings to the end the first great Roman civil war, which sees massive loss of life, the first real sort of imposition of a autocracy in Rome, although, well, an authoritarian period under Cinna, and then a pure sort of autocracy under Sulla, although it is time limited. Again, these are obviously real warning signs for the viability of the Republic. Even if Sulla's goal is to restore the Republic, put it on a kind of conservative keel so that it can go forward. As we will see, Sulla's reforms, for the most part, do not hold. And indeed, much of the next decade will be devoted towards piece by piece, chipping away at some of the most strident reactionary elements of Sulla. And we'll talk about that next lecture.